Thank you for coming out today. Just going to make a few announcements. First of all, you have vendors here that have good products. When we have the break, please patronize the vendors. You got Brother Booker T. Coleman. He has videos, audios, and he has books dealing with the subject matter. You have Brother David Head. He has a good magazine dealing with the Oklahoma 1921 lynching down in Oklahoma. And I have good videos over there. Yusuf and Leon have good videos dealing with the subject matter. Brother Booker T. Coleman is going to be dealing with the Crusades, the history of the Moors, and the precursor or the Cristobal Colon, a.k.a. Christopher Columbus. We should have seen them coming. Give Brother Booker T. Coleman a black hand.
Hotel. Assalamu alaikum. My brothers and sisters, I'm so happy to be back here at Grassroots Productions for a number of reasons. For one reason is that I've had a chance to come and speak on a number of different issues. First, we dealt with the Kemetic origin of the universe, talking about our Kemetic ancestors and how they viewed the beginning of the universe, the importance of this. Because whether we realize it or not, much of who we are and what we become comes out of our understanding of astronomy. And even when you break down the word astronomy, you look at the word ast, which is Aset, the feminine principle, and then Ra. And so there's a lot of things hidden within these words. Another thing that's coming out in our research that we're doing, and I'd like to begin by just letting you know that it's very important that none of this be, let's say, written in stone. That our children and our children's children, there's so much that we have forgotten. And I often use the word forgotten as opposed to lost. Because psychologically, when you lose something, it gives you the impression that you must go outside of yourself to find it. But when something is forgotten, it means that it's within you. It dwells within you, and all you have to do is go inside of yourself, reach for it, and bring it up. Yes. Our ancient ancestors had a word they called heka. Heka meaning to go within, to bring out. And that's why we do meditation, and that's why we do all sorts of forms of incantations to go inside of ourselves to bring something out. Much of who we are and what we've got to do is always, and it's important that we know this. In so many different ways, the things that we're facing in our world today is as clear to me as to why we're going through it as what we're actually going through. There's no problem I have in looking at what's happening today. That election a few days ago. Yes. Yesterday was Veterans Day. That's why we named this, and when my brother Yusuf and those here at Grassroots asked me for a title, and I used the word Crusades, and I used the word the precurse, or the precursor. Precursor gives the impression of something that comes before. And in so many ways, the Crusades was a symbol of what was yet to come. And that's why I subtitled it, We Should Have Seen Them Coming. Because much of what happened in the Crusades was a precursor to why we sit in this room today, wondering why we're going through. Well, Professor Clark, our teacher, our master teacher, would say to us, he's surprised and we're surprised. It follows such a pattern that we are where we are today because the left foot steps in front of the right foot. It is only by nature that we're here where we are today. And the one essence, or the one thing that's going to get us out is our consciousness. And that is what Heka is. Heka is to go within, to bring out. And it was symbolized by the cobra, or the uraeus, what Kemites call the irta, I-R-T-A. And again, I want to be careful with the words that I use because, again, we're still looking very closely at the Kemetic language. We're looking at a number of different languages that while on the front side it looks like one thing, research will show us that there's so much more that we have yet to study. My job here is not to tell you what happened. My job here is to make us think. That's all I've ever wanted to be as a teacher, is to make us think. Because we are too comfortable in this nonsense that they're teaching us. And we're reading these books as if these are gospel books, and as if what we're reading is actually what happened. There is so much that we have yet to study. But the one thing I do know is this, is that if there is to be salvation on the planet, it's going to come from us. have a divine purpose to be in this part of the world, African folk. We were brought here specifically for a divine reason, and that was to save this planet. Because our ancestors saw the demise of certain things coming, and they wrote on the walls of ancient Kemet, which was then held within the bosom of the Moor. Because the reason why we even have a Western civilization today is because of the Moor. What's so important to understand about the Moor is that the Moor was just not Muslim. To say Moor is not equivalent to say Muslim. There were Christian Moors. There were Jewish Moors. There were Moors that carried the Kemetic legacy. Moor was African. It's like the word Ethiopia. Ethiopia means land of burnt face or people of burnt face. Well, Moor means people of burnt face. It meant black. In the language that came out of the Latin languages. Latin is no more, no less than the people that congregated around a place in Europe known as Latium. And out of Latium comes Latin. This is why I'm so concerned with our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters when I tell them to be careful by calling yourself Latino. Because if you're a Latino, so are Haitians. So are Brazilians. So is anyone who has centered themselves around the Latin language. But the Latin language doesn't exist. That's a figment of someone's imagination. As Napoleon III said, that history was a lie that was agreed upon by the world leaders. And so what has happened is that there has been a creation of a historical story, told, agreed upon by leaders. They've okayed it to be put in books. We read these books and we think that's actually what happened. And that's just not how it happened. That's just not the history of the world. And that election the other day is, it's no surprise. None whatsoever. This is a turning point in the history of our planet. They had to win that. Just like his brother said, by hook or by crook. But what we didn't know, he did it hook and by crook. It wasn't an or, it was and. And it's so obvious to me that they stole that election. Now mind you, I didn't care for either. Let's make that plain. Neither of them have our interest at heart. But you have to understand why they don't have our interest at heart. Having our interest at heart means that they are signing their own suicidal death wish. We were here. We are the beginnings of all. We did not ask them to separate themselves from us. We did not ask them to do that. They did that voluntarily because of something that happened within their own pineal gland that made them create a world that is called xenophobic, which means that you are fearful of the foreign. African folk not only aren't fearful of the foreign, they embrace that which is not like themselves because they know that there's only growth in opposition. If everybody agrees in something, there's no growth because we're all the same. It's only when someone comes with a different idea or a different way of living that you're allowed to grow. That's what I often said about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan had to quit because he couldn't become a better basketball player. Because he could not become a better basketball player until a better basketball player stepped on the basketball court. And none came. Muhammad Ali, same thing with Muhammad Ali. In order for you to become better, someone better than you has to come into your presence. For civilization to move forward, it has to be pushed. It doesn't go on its own. What we're experiencing now is a civilization that is not being pushed. And why? Because we're not pushing it. We are the pushers of all civilizations. Every time you see civilizations rising, you see African folk behind it, pushing, agitating, pushing it forward. Not necessarily physically and violently, but just with new ideas. You don't see that now. That's why you have all of these things that you have, these movies coming out, Rocky IV, Rocky V, Rocky 2000.